I was told this is an international conference, and I can actually get away with doing the presentation in English, because last time I tried it in Greek, it was a total disaster, which is my fault, but I do apologize on behalf. And no, I didn't pick up the title from the well-known song, but as an industry, we are extremely good at inventing cycles of change, disruption, and what else, and yet doing the same over and over again. I mean, we're talking now about 5G. Somebody said is it too early, is it too late, is it the right time? It's all of the above, but some people are already talking about 6G. Okay, to be the first 6G conference in Finland. Samsung has gone around and announced that it's working on 6G, and I'm sure everybody else, particularly in the world, is trying to cause the next disruption cycle, the next investment cycle. So what? Why? So if you ask 10 people what 5G is, you're probably going to get 20 answers. You might get 25, I don't know, something along those lines. Everybody kind of tries to look at the little thing that is of most interest to them, whether it is, control user plane separation, the new radio, of course. New radio is going to change the world. I'm not sure why radio is going to change the world, but never mind. None of the above. All these are technologies. Lovely technologies. What do we do with them actually is what counts. And if one tries to take a full picture of what the 5G standard is all about, reading, all the 3GPP documents, vetted or not vetted yet, you come up with, actually, it's the industry's latest attempt to make mobility look and act like the internet, rather than something that provides internet. That's the way I read it, anyway, and I'm happy to be disputed in the other direction, but it's very much, 3G was supposed to give us broadband, 4G was supposed to fix 3G, but 5G is supposed to make it actually work like a broadband network of the 21st century. We're trying to catch up with what's happening in the rest of the world, but we've got to do it right. Now, the interesting problem statement is that once we build all this beautiful stuff, and there's tons of technology available, will be available. I mean, there's no question that the technology to facilitate all of these pieces is going to come around. The question is, how do we use it? And the first indications are not the best in the universe, because we have the first announcements of 5G services in North America with pricing. So Sprint announced the pricing of their 5G service, well, however limited it is, and they announced that they're actually, I think it was Sprint and T-Mobile have announced, but anyway, one of them announced that they're going to do a surcharge of $10 per month for 5G service, and then retracted it for an infinite period of time. The other one simply offered it as an option on their highest unlimited package. So we're seeing the race to zero of giving more and more about less and less in the broadband world actually happening again in the 5G space. As a consumer, I am very happy. I get more, probably for less. As an industry, we need to take stock on how we're actually going to make these cycles sustainable, because otherwise all the industry is doing is handing the value to a different group of probably much smarter players in the business, okay? And of course, the key to actually monetizing 5G, everybody has agreed, is enterprise services, okay? Great. But enterprises are not the ones that we know, okay? The ones that would actually give us an order, and they would wait for 2 months for the installation to happen, and then another 15 days for testing and commissioning and whatnot. Enterprises have changed completely their expectation. Shadow IT in enterprise is a classic example. They have a 5-minute tolerance because their customers have a 5-minute tolerance. How many of you can wait if you click and it doesn't come back to you? If it doesn't come back to you, close, go to the next one, next provider. Therefore, all that we do, the way that we leverage technology in the 5G space needs to be able to satisfy this innate requirements of the enterprise environment. Otherwise, the relevance is going to be limited, and they're going to do it themselves. It's not going to be the first time. Let me step back for a moment and explain why I think it is a shift of being able to actually operate like an internet company. Rakuten is not a mobile operator. Okay? Rakuten is actually an e-commerce provider, fairly good competitor to Amazon, actually. They've shown up now in Germany and have given Amazon a really big run for their money. They decided to build a mobile operator. Why? Because A, they have a customer base. B, they actually figured out that the way 5G is going, they've got the technology to do it in a much smarter way. In fact, they're quite arrogant about it. And they came up, well, that's about 4 weeks ago, we're stronger, faster, and cleverer than all of you in the industry. And they strutted about. Why? Because they are a greenfield. We're not greenfields in this world. We're brownfields. But we can actually learn something from them and apply it to our business and how we're going to give 5G to the world. You know, to me, it's quite simple. There's 3 pillars that we can learn from all those internet players, over-the-top players, web-scale players, whatever you want to call them that week, who are starting to stick their nose into the service provider traditional business like a Rakuten. We need to aggressively simplify, we need to massively automate, and we need to give ourselves scale by cloudifying our environment. Now, all this is motherhood and apple pie. Sure, everybody wants to do that. So it's not a big deal, but we need to have a look at how we're going to leverage it to do something useful. Now, if we try to do the same, we're probably going to get the same results. So if we think that the 5G exercise is going to be another cycle of the 3G exercise or the 4G exercise, and all of us are going to be a really happy industry because we're going to build a huge cycle of investment, yeah, sure, no way. Because we're going to keep going into a race to zero. We need to figure out how we're going to turn all this investment into something useful that people are prepared to pay for. And the people that are prepared to pay for it are primarily the enterprise market, because the consumer market is the volume, but it certainly doesn't have the margin. So when we think about, I'll get a bit technical for a moment here, not too technical. Okay. When we think about what we need to be doing as an industry, we need to be actually thinking around the way of exposing our whole network as a complete API to my customer base. Instead of going through a tortuous process of actually acquiring whatever service I want to acquire as an enterprise, I need to be able to do an API call directly into the network, and the network responding to me with what I want. Network as a service. That is an architectural shift. It's a massive architectural shift, but it's also an operational and mental shift that we have to go through as an industry. We're not selling subscriptions anymore, guys, in case we haven't realized it, okay? Once you start building this as a model, you realize that if I'm going to be giving segmentation of service into my enterprise customers, I need to actually be able to segment across my whole network. Now, if I'm going to be able to do that, I need to be able to do that at scale. Today's underlying transport technology that we're using or have been using in the industry is not possible to scale at that level. Just to give you an example, one major operator in one country, they have 20,000 static tunnels just for their current operation. If they actually go into an on-demand model, it is estimated that those 20,000 are going to become 100,000, which need to be torn down or installed depending on demand. There is no way the current protocol model is going to do it. We're going to have to shift to something that is much simpler and much more dynamic. We did a change as a test of the underlying protocol infrastructure, and we went from 20,000 tunnels to two commands. This is massive simplification, but also ability to respond really rapidly to enterprise demands. The other piece is Everybody in enterprise services is starting from their VPN, their WAN service and whatever. This is the first thing that we will offer to them. But they're shifting to a software-defined WAN model. If they're shifting to a software-defined WAN model, we need to make sure that we extend this capability to the mobility space, which implies leveraging the ability to slice, the ability to offer an API-based enterprise service into the complete SD-WAN of the customer all the way out to the final device that you're carrying, and therefore turning, fundamentally, the enterprise into a dynamic MVNO. Okay? And finally, much to the chagrin, I think, of everybody that would like a single radio type model, we all know it's just never going to happen. We're going to have to find a mechanism. It's not going to happen for technology reasons, for legacy reasons, for ownership reasons. It's going to be a mixture of things. So we need to work as an industry to have the capability of giving my enterprise customer, myself, the ability to roam totally seamlessly between the networks and the environments, whether they're Wi-Fi 6, whether they're 5G radio, or whether they're bloody carrier pigeons, whatever comes down the road. We need to solve that problem at the generic level in the industry. This is the stuff that we're working on at Cisco in order to deliver the promise of 5G to the enterprise space, because we don't think that we will invent all the use cases. We think that we will be able to enable the use cases by giving simplicity and ease of entry into the network. But we can't do it on our own. We need the industry, and we also need the operators to embrace and move in this direction. Our end goal is this whole churn of 5G actually is an opportunity for a whole host of large use cases. We've all talked about it, right? We saw the gentleman from Italy just earlier. They have a really cool program on Industry 4.0 in Italy with the appropriate incubators and all these things. So we have some really good examples of smart cities here in Greece, and so on and so forth. Is take all the technologies that we have and turn them into a toolkit for all of these industries to be able to go. And by the way, there is nothing inherently 5G about it. Apart from the radio, pretty much everything else you can build on any broadband environment. Because that's the reality. The reality is that 5G is the convergence of the mobile network into the broadband world to deliver internet-style services. Thank you very much.